Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review. In this video I'm going to review Final Light by Final Light. This right here is a brand new collaborative project between James Kent, who is mostly known for his quite popular and successful synthwave project as Perturbator, and Johannes Persson, who is mostly known for being the vocalist of the sludge metal band Cult of Luna. So these are certainly two quite interesting worlds tying together, and I was honestly really curious to see the results over here. I was kinda having an impression on what direction this album was gonna go based on the last album of Perturbator, which I found it to be a quite nice change of direction and making for actually one of his better projects. It was an album that ended up embracing a more old school but also quite dark aesthetic, with much more intense instrumentation and a nice little touch of like a more metal sound. But here's the thing, out of Lustful Sacraments, my favorite track ended up being by far the final song, God Says, featuring Hagman's Chair. This was such a nice, beautiful and atmospheric track with a nice dark tone to it, only to end the final minutes with a really explosive, slow and intense part that was just quite powerful and quite dynamic. It elevated the whole experience and it made for an amazing finisher. Now imagine an entire album based off this one track, God Says, and this is basically what we get with the direction of Final Light. This is an extremely powerful and dynamic debut that fuses nicely elements of Darksynth that we saw in the last Perturbator album and also some of the more slow and aggressive directions of an atmospheric sludge metal album, and obviously this made for something that I really enjoyed. Could have been better? Sure, I believe that there are some occasions over here where the album can feel slightly repetitive and having a few tracks that are just a little bit too long and being kinda slow paced. And even if this is basically the case with albums that go into directions like this, I still believe that some of the moments could have dragged a bit shorter. It's one of those things that I end up not really enjoying that much in sludge metal albums, and I believe that this one basically suffers from some of the same issues as well. But with that being said, I still really like the production on this album. The sound was really good. This was also one of my favorite aspects about Lustful Sacraments. It was an album from Perturbator that was loud and felt quite dynamic and powerful, and he basically took the same direction with the sound provided over here. Now if there is one thing though that I ended up not really enjoying as much as an aspect of this album was basically the vocals. I don't really feel that they work all that amazingly with those particular instrumentals. I ended up enjoying much more the passionate clean vocals out of Hagman's Chair in the track God Says. It really fit for the tone of the song and it made it quite impactful, and I was hoping for more like this over here, but the growls of Johannes Persson, while they sound pretty nice, I can't really say that I find them all that fitting with those particular songs and the aesthetics that they create. So I'd say that the vocals ended up feeling kind of like a distraction. But with all that out of the way, like I said, this is a pretty enjoyable album and it immediately makes a really nice impression with the very first track, Nothing Will Bear Your Name, which instantly gave me the vibes of the track God Says, which I ended up really enjoying. This is a track that goes really slow once again, as it takes a while to really get to the explosive and dynamic part of the song, but even the introduction is really cool, as I really like the synths over here, and it makes for a really nice build-up that leads halfway towards the song into a really powerful and really dynamic moment, keeping some of the same ideas that we got with the atmospheric ambient parts early on into the song, and it made for some quite nice riffs and melodies. Like I said, the vocals ended up being the only sort of distracting part over here, and the one that I ended up enjoying the least if I was about to find an issue with this particular song, but overall I really liked what this track was going for in terms of the sound, the pacing, the production. It was a really beautiful and really well done song, and it served amazingly as an introduction point, as this song in particular didn't really have that much to it. It was more to the minimal side, but it was a nice way to prepare you for what the rest of the album was gonna do. Now after this point, I believe that we get just some pretty decent moments that definitely have elements that I really enjoy, But like I said, I believe that after a certain point some of the tracks kinda drag a little bit longer and they could have been a bit shorter. Like the track in the Void, I believe that there are some really great elements over here, but I couldn't really say that it needed to be 9 minutes long. Still, I believe that it's a pretty cool song. Then there's a track It Came With The Water, which is basically the most metal moment so far, the one that would end up incorporating more elements that would actually be fitting for an atmospheric sludge metal song. Weirdly enough though, I'd say that this track contained my least favorite vocal performance. I don't really know why, but I don't believe that Johannes Persson really did all that much of a great job with the vocals over here, and once again even with this style they didn't really feel all that fitting. Still though, like I said, in terms of sound and production, I believe that this is another really nice and powerful song, and I really liked some of the riffs, and there are some excellent moments when it comes to some of the melodic passages feeling somewhat emotional and pretty distinct. The self-titled track Final Light was another one that I would say that it didn't really need to be 8.5 minutes long. It is a pretty decent and fine song. It is basically the same thing with previous songs. I believe that there are elements and parts out of it that I find to be really enjoyable, but as a whole thing, it's not one that I see myself really returning that much into. Then there's the track The Fall of a Giant, which I'd say it was my least favorite moment in terms of its pacing, and I would also say it was my least favorite in terms of production. It really took a while for this track to really pick up and go into the more explosive and dynamic moments, but before that point I feel that the production was feeling a little bit flat and not really doing all that much. I believe that there could be more to this song rather than just some pretty cool ideas here and there. Finally though, I'd say that the album ends with a really good note with the track Ruined to Decay. I'd say this is the one moment where we get the closest approach to the very first track, Nothing Will Bear Your Name, and also with what God Says did. It is a track that takes a while to get to its main point. We almost get 5 minutes of the song where it's basically just introduction, but the track nicely builds up with simple but effective melodies, nice scenes, and just an overall really soothing but also quite dark atmosphere. When it comes to the second part after the drop, I believe that we get some of the most compelling melodies out of this whole project. It is a track that just feels really cool, and it's a great way to end this album. And even if this is the longest moment over here, going for 10 minutes, I believe that this was a track that was really nicely paced, and it had lots of memorable moments, making this one of the most striking songs out of this album. So I believe that overall this was a pretty solid experimentation and an album that really paid off. I really ended up appreciating this new direction of Darksynth from James Kent more and more. So far it has already proven that it makes for quality albums, and while it certainly has its shortcomings, I still end up being quite satisfied with the overall results. I'm gonna give Final Light a 7+ out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why? And what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.